What's up, guys? Travis Page here, doing a spot for Hyrus' channel. Shouts out to you, man. Thank you very much for asking me to do a video for you. And the topic I want to cover is the misconception that training with reps of 5 or less is what's actually making you stronger. I know it sounds crazy, but hang with me. Think with me for a second. Think way back to probably our first high school biology courses. I believe that's when we were first introduced to this topic. Do you remember this?
Adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the molecule that our body uses for energy to carry out a whole bunch of different biological processes. When ATP gets used or metabolized, it gets reduced to ADP, adenosine diphosphate. It loses a phosphate group, and that's what provided the energy for whatever mechanism that your body needed to use it for, and it must be regenerated to ATP before it can be used again.
In the context of weightlifting, this is the molecule that provides energy for a muscle contraction, which allows us to produce force. Our bodies metabolize this molecule and regenerate it in 3 different ways depending on what kind of demand we're placing on our body. It either happens through aerobic glycolysis, anaerobic glycolysis, or the ATP CP pathway. Let's take a look at them.
So, aerobic glycolysis replenishes ATP stores through a series of mechanisms that utilize typically glucose, oxygen, and ultimately fat.
This pathway is the dominant one during activities such as distance running and cycling, or in the context of weightlifting, performing any exercise with more than 15 reps or so. These activities are low intensity and don't demand the production of more energy quickly. This is also why excessive cardio can actually potentially cause you to hold on to more fat. When you're using this energy system primarily, and it being the dominant one, like if you're going into the gym and doing like an hour, a half an hour to like an hour of cardio, like multiple days a week, and that's all you're doing, you're stressing this energy system most and making it most dominant, so your body's going to get more efficient at it. And as you saw, oxygen and fat are what fuel, along with glucose, are what fuel this energy system primarily. So if you're training that energy system without taking the measures with your diet and taking care of some of the other factors, your body is going to be prepared to use that energy system more efficiently by storing more fat so that it's available to use, so that it's available to use when it's time to.
Another pathway your body uses is the ATP CP pathway, CP being creatine phosphate. ATP gets broken down into ADP, and then creatine phosphate breaks down to replenish the ATP stores.
This is the pathway our bodies use during the most intense activities. In the context of weightlifting, using any weight that you can only get for between 1 and 5 reps. The demand is so great that it zaps all of your ATP stores really fast, which is exactly why when you take an absolute 1 rep max, you can only do it 1 time. Duh. Because you virtually zapped out all the available energy you had stored in your muscle tissue to perform that 1 rep. This is also why the rest guidelines for workouts where you take heavy singles, doubles, triples, and 5s is to rest about 3 to 5 minutes, because that's about how long it takes for the CP to restore the ATP in your muscle tissue during intense bouts of physical activity. And this is also why creatine is actually a damn legitimate supplement. Outside of supplementing with it, the only real source that you can get more creatine from is from meats. But the problem is, once they've been cooked, the concentration of creatine and the meat that you're consuming is so low, it's not going to have any type of significant impact on your workouts. And by saturating your muscles with them through supplementation, by taking about 5 to 10 grams a day, you've helped raise the level of available creatine phosphate that's existing in your muscles to be available for use with replenishment of ATP stores. So that's why creatine actually does help you go a little bit harder with your workouts, and it's a legitimate supplement.
Last pathway is anaerobic glycolysis. ATP gets broken down into ADP, and then through the breakdown of glucose and glycogen, it gets restored to ATP again. But it's anaerobic, so this one happens in the absence of oxygen.
The dominant use of this pathway is associated with moderately intense exercise. In the context of weightlifting, doing exercises where you're performing reps somewhere between 6 to 12 or 6 to 15. And this is the real sweet spot and little nugget of truth when it comes to strength training. The intensity that we use when performing reps in this range, about 6 to 15, is just high enough, yet just low enough to yield a very specific adaptation that allows us to produce more force. Remember that the nucleus of a cell is what's responsible for all the metabolic processes that occur within it. That includes the production of ATP. Keep in mind that your body responds to performing reps within the range of 6 to 15 by becoming more efficient at them. And I have to look at the textbooks and the research, the science journals or whatever again to be sure, but the time frame that the anaerobic glycolytic pathway is dominant is about any exercise set or duration of any exercise that lasts between, I think, about 6 to 10 seconds before it starts switching over to the aerobic glycolytic pathway. But any weight that you're using that allows you to do about, again, roughly 6 to 15 reps is only going to take about 8 to 10 seconds approximately. So keep that in mind. Your body becomes more efficient when you train that pathway primarily. Your body has to respond to this stimulus quickly and without the use of oxygen, and it will do that primarily by developing more nuclei within your muscle tissue. And what that means is it potentially raises the resting amount of ATP that is stored in each individual muscle fiber. This is also why once you've trained for a significant amount of time, I guess like a few months or so, and you, like, I don't know, life happens and you have to hang it up for a while, but say like you've trained for like 6 months to a year straight, right? And you got to quit for a little while, but when you go back to it, you know how everyone says you pick it up really quickly again? That's exactly why. Because your body's responded to that stimulus, it's developed more nuclei, and they exist in those muscle cells for a long time, even if they become inactive, right? Even if your muscles atrophy. The nuclei take a relatively long time to degrade. So you hang it up for a few months, a few weeks, a few months, and then you go back to it. Those nuclei still exist within your muscle fibers, and then you start imposing the stress on it again, and the need for them to become reactivated becomes mandated. So that's why it's really easy to pick it back up when you've been training for a significant amount of time, because your body's made those adaptations, and all it is the fact that they go from being dormant to becoming active again.
So just to illustrate what I'm getting at, this is a very crude example, but say when you're able to squat 300 pounds as your max, maybe the resting concentration of ATP within a muscle fiber, that's what these are, by the way, the red, is supposed to illustrate an individual muscle fiber. You know what I'm saying? But say it's approximately 200 molar concentration of ATP, right? Then you train the anaerobic glycolytic pathway for a while. Spend some time training your squat within the rep range of 6 to 15 for a while. And those adaptations take place. Your body develops more nuclei within your muscle tissue and gives you more available ATP. So the next time you go to max out after a few weeks, if you've been training that pathway, maybe you're able to squat something like 450 pounds. And the concentration of ATP within your muscle fibers might be something like 500 molars. Again, those are just arbitrary numbers, but you get the idea. It's that by training the anaerobic glycolytic pathway, by using more reps, raises your potential to produce more force.
Now, of course, none of this is absolute. As with anything in science, this depends on this, depends on this, depends on that. There are many factors, but what I'm arguing is this concept is very fundamental to making gains in strength. Training in the proverbial bodybuilder rep ranges is what actually raises your potential to produce more force by and large. Significant changes take place that can only take place by training in the lower rep ranges as well, between reps 1 and 5. Like neural efficiency, that's a very real thing. If you're taking a legitimate, if you're performing a legitimate 1 to 5 reps with a weight that is so heavy that you can only do about 1 to 5 reps, that means the intensity is so high that it forces your nervous system and your body to have to adapt to be able to move that type of weight, of course. But what I'm saying is the potential to move that type of weight was developed back when you were performing reps between 6 to 15. The rest of it, the 1 to 5, is specific to powerlifting. It's honing the skill, the craft of taking an absolute 1 rep max. If you can squat 315 pounds for 10 reps, use a calculator, a 1 rep max calculator. That means you're probably good for 420 at that point. But I can guarantee you that day that you squatted 315 AMRAP for 10 reps, you will not be able to hit that 420 that day. That's when you have to get specific. It's like, okay, I can probably squat around 420, maybe a little bit more if I peak right. But then the next process would be over the next few weeks is raising the intensity and lowering the volume so you can demonstrate that potential. You following what I'm saying? So let's say over the next few weeks you start lowering the reps and raising the intensity. Say you have a week where you work up to like 365 pounds and you take it for 5. Never done that before. I'm stronger. I'm doing 5s. Cool. That's really good. But again, I argue, plug that into a calculator. 365 for 5 gives your estimate at about a 411 squat. It doesn't mean you can't get better. You're probably just adjusting to the raised intensity. You can only do 365 for 5 that week. But do you see what I'm saying? Yes, you've done 365 for 5, but you've never tried it before. But when you were doing 315 for 10, that already told you you were probably capable of a 420 squat. You still picking up what I'm throwing down? So let's say you keep working that angle, right? You keep raising the intensity and dropping the reps a little bit over the next week or two. Say you get to the point where you can do 405 for 3. Never done that before. It's great, and it is really good. But it's not because you're doing 3 reps. 405 for 3 will tell you that you're probably good for about a 430 squat right there, which is good. Again, like maybe there's some other adaptations taking place with your nervous system, and you peaked right. But all I'm saying is, remember, back when you did 315 for 10, you already knew you could do that. It was when you were training in those relatively higher rep ranges that potential was developed. When you start training with 5 or less, what you're really doing is more or less training your nervous system, among some other things. I don't want to make this too complicated, but primarily you're just getting your body adjusted to training and moving those higher intensity weights. You understand? So my bottom line is, training with 5 reps or less doesn't necessarily make you stronger. What it's actually doing is helping you realize the potential you already had. Training in rep ranges too frequently and too often that are between 1 and 5 that primarily use the ATP CP pathway does not provide room for growth in the long run. The sweet spot is training between 6 to 12, 6 to 15. It's debatable. And again, it's not a hard science. Like I said, there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of freaks out there. But it's very fundamental that you spend time training your main lifts in the 6 to 12 to 15 rep range. This is also why accessory work is so important. We typically train our accessory exercises between 6 and 15 reps, and that's why they contribute so much to the big lifts and the big 3, particularly with the conjugate method. I've got my own thoughts on that, but that's for another video. But I mean, the accessory work is important because by training the accessory exercises, we get those 6 to 12 to 15 reps of stimulus to those individual muscles, which in turn contribute to the greater whole that is the squat, bench, and deadlift in regard to powerlifting. Cool, so that was all I had to say. Thank you again to Iris for giving me this spot. Thank you for asking me to do a video for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it and were able to take something away from it. Please comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. That's what it's about, is the exchange of ideas. So just let me know what you thought. I'd tell you to go check out Iris's channel because it's great, but you're already here. So thanks again, and I'll catch you guys next time, all right? Take it easy.